Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah, and I'm part of the team here at Test Innovators. The focus of today's webinar is studying for the ACT and SAT over winter break. So to start, I would like to share a little bit about what we do here at Test Innovators. We've helped over 150,000 students prepare for entrance exams and get into the most selective schools. We also work with many tutoring companies, educational consultants, and schools. So without further ado, let's dive into today's webinar agenda. So today we're going to cover general preparation guidelines, tips for effective practice, overall test strategies, as well as section-specific strategies and test day advice. Throughout the webinar, please feel free to type questions in the Q&A. If we have time at the end, I'll answer those questions, but if there are any I don't get to, I'll be sure to email you a response along with the webinar recording. We're also live streaming on Facebook today, so if any of our Facebook viewers have questions, please feel free to reach out to us at support@testinnovators.com, and we'll be sure to follow up with an answer. First, let's discuss some general preparation guidelines. So, in other words, how do you prepare for a test like the SAT or the ACT? The first thing you're going to want to do is take a full-length practice test. You want to make sure that the test is accurate, provides normative scoring, and tracks timing information. Taking a practice test, no matter when your official test date is, will give you a familiarity with the test style, difficulty, and content so that you know what to expect on test day. Step 2, review the results. I think that reviewing the test, this sort of review process, is possibly the most important step in your preparation. This is the place where you're going to learn the most about what you already do well and what you need to work on. So when you do this, you're going to want to identify the areas that need the most improvement, or find trends in subject areas that need work. For example, if you notice you miss all the questions relating to geometry, you know that it's time to review some geometry. So you're going to go back through the test and review every question you answered incorrectly or skipped. You're going to read the answer explanation and make sure you know how to do that question if you were to see something similar again. I also like to review questions that I guessed on. So if I wasn't sure of an answer, you can guess and you might get it right. It's also good to review those so that you know how to do them in the future without guessing. So you want to make sure you understand how to arrive at the correct answer and how to avoid choosing any of the wrong answer choices. And so you're going to want to review relevant strategies for each type of question to help you on the actual test. So once you have a good sense of where you need to improve, then you want to do targeted practice. So focus on the areas that could use work based on your practice test results. And then you're going to practice those specific question types until you are confident. So for example, as we said before, if you found that you need help with the geometry section, review your geometry, do some geometry questions until you feel comfortable. And then you're going to repeat. So you're going to go back to step 1, which is take a full-length practice test. Step 2, review that practice test. Step 3, do targeted practice. And step 4, again, repeat. So keep repeating until test day. One recommended study schedule is to do 1 practice test a week and complete recommended practice exercises in between. I think this is a really great workflow for that. So you're doing 1 test a week, completing the practice exercises, going back and taking the test. Of course, it depends on how much time before your test day, how you space that out, but 1 test a week is a very good option. So now we're going to go over some tips for effective practice. Because just like with any other skill, it's not just about how much you practice, but how you're practicing. So tip 1, don't forget to take a break. Relaxation and sleep are important so that your brain can function effectively while you're working. So it's really important to make sure that you are getting enough sleep as you're preparing for the test and as the test is approaching, and you are taking some breaks to relax. It will help you perform better. Reading helps you build a strong vocabulary and strengthen your reading comprehension skills. So reading is a great way to relax. So it's a way you can relax. If you pick up a book you enjoy, you can sort of work on your skills while doing something enjoyable and relaxing. So that's definitely something I recommend doing as you're preparing for the test. So get in the habit of reading. Another tip is to practice a little bit each day. So practicing, in shorter sessions, it's often more effective than one long practice session. And you want to, find a time that you can fit into your schedule. So incorporate practice into your routine, into your schedule, so that you're doing, a little bit of practice each day on a schedule. You'll get in the habit of it, and it will help you. Next, we're going to discuss overall test strategies. The first strategy is the process of elimination. The questions on the ACT and SAT are multiple choice. For the most part, the SAT does have those math grading questions, but for the most part, these are multiple choice tests. So the correct answer is there. Don't forget to use the answer choices to your advantage to help you find the correct one. So if you don't know the answer, eliminating answer choices is a great start. And then once you've eliminated those wrong answer choices, you can make an educated guess. So if you've managed to eliminate a few of the answer choices, you've increased your odds of choosing the correct answer. So you've given yourself a better chance of choosing the correct answer, and you've narrowed down the possibilities of what it could be. Using your time effectively is critical. Every correct answer gives you the same number of points. So your goal is to answer as many questions as possible. Do not waste valuable time on hard questions when you could answer, 3 easy questions correctly in the same amount of time as you could answer one hard question. So one way to manage this is to group questions by difficulty. So the first step for this is every time you read a question, ask yourself, do I know how to do this? If your answer is yes, absolutely, do the question. If the answer is maybe, or I'm not really sure about it, mark an answer for the question and circle it in your test booklet and come back to it later. So marking an answer helps you avoid having your bubbling sheet get off from your test booklet. So you want to make sure you at least put an answer placeholder in for the questions you're skipping. So first, answer all the easy questions, then go back and do the hard questions you skipped. You're going to do this on every section of the test. So with this strategy, answer all the easy questions first because they're worth the same number of points as the hard questions, and you want to answer your goal is to answer the most questions correctly in the time you're given. Another way to manage time is by skipping questions. When you do skip a question and come back to it later, it is important that you don't get off track on the bubbling sheet. These are paper tests. So I always recommend that students bubble in an answer, guess and bubble in an answer for the questions you skip. Mark the question in your booklet and come back to it at the end if you have time. There are 2 advantages to this. Number 1, you won't, your answer sheet will correspond with the right question later on. So let's say you skip question 5 in the test booklet, but on your answer sheet, you could have a serious problem on your hands. But if you do put in a placeholder for question 5 and you come back to it later, you won't have that problem. And if you don't have time to come back to it, you've at least put a guess down. So, and since these tests don't punish you for guessing, if you get a question wrong, you get 0 points. And if you skip a question, you get 0 points. You might as well guess. So put a placeholder answer in there, knowing that you can come back to it later if you have time. If you don't get a chance to come back to it later, you still put a guess down. So definitely make sure you bubble in an answer when you're skipping the question in your booklet. Definitely put something on your bubble sheet. Next, we're going to go over section-specific strategies. So the English section of the ACT and the writing and language section of the SAT consists of passages and questions. The questions refer to an underlying portion of the passage, a section of the passage, or the passage as a whole. For questions that refer to the underlying portion of the passage, it's best to read a sentence or two before the underlying portion and a sentence or two after, rather than reading the entire passage. For questions that refer to the passage as a whole, you definitely want to make sure you've read the entire passage. So one way to manage time here is to do the questions that refer to a very specific part of the passage first, work through the passage that way, and at the end to answer the questions that deal with the whole passage. Another great strategy for these sections of the test is to think of your own answer first before going to the answer choices. So try filling in the blank before looking at the answer choices. And then after selecting an answer, reread the sentence using your answer to make sure it's correct. There are also several helpful strategies for math questions for both tests. You want to read the question carefully and underline important information. This includes words and numbers indicating quantities, relationships, and calculations you'll need to answer the questions. You want to particularly pay attention to what the question is asking, as well as the units. For some questions, the jumping off point is actually in the answers, so it's helpful to work backwards. For example, for questions with an unknown quantity, you can often substitute the answer choices for that unknown quantity to see which is correct. You will always want to start with the middle answer here because it minimizes the number of answers you have to substitute and thus saves you time. Estimation is a powerful tool for eliminating wrong answers. For every question, before beginning to solve, ballpark what you think the right answer should be. Sometimes math questions may seem very challenging to solve abstractly. In cases like these, it can be helpful to use actual numbers to determine the answer. Finally, check that you answered the given question. For every problem after you finish solving, look back at what the question was asking you to find. Make sure this matches your answer. Sometimes you'll see a question, you think you're solving for X, but they're looking for X plus 4. So definitely make sure you answered the question that they are asking you. So for the reading sections, the most important rule of reading comprehension is that the passage will always provide all of the information needed to answer the question. If any part of the answer choice doesn't match the information given in the passage, it is incorrect. So you're always going to need to find evidence for your answer in the passage. Whenever possible, after you read a question, come up with an answer before you look at the answer choices. This will help you eliminate wrong answer choices and find the best answer. In general, avoid answer choices that are too extreme. So if you see answer choices with words like only, always, never, or other extreme words, these are unlikely to be the correct answer. You should only choose them if you are absolutely sure that this sentiment is in the passage as well. The science section of the ACT consists of 3 types of passages: research summaries, data representation, and conflicting viewpoints. The section covers biology, chemistry, so biology, chemistry, earth, space science, and physics. You're going to want to start by reading the passage carefully. Then, if necessary, reread parts of the passage that pertain to each question. The passage will also provide all of the information needed to answer the question. So if any part of the answer choice doesn't match the information given in the passage, it is incorrect. So this is not a science content test. This is about reading the passages and understanding them and being able to use your science training to answer this. So you don't need to have a specific knowledge of biology and chemistry or physics in order to answer these passages. So don't worry about that if you haven't studied one of these particular areas in your science classes. You also want to read and consider all of the answer choices before choosing the one that best answers the question. So although the writing section for the ACT is optional, some schools do require it. The writing section is no longer a part of the SAT, so this just pertains to the ACT. You want to read the prompt carefully and make sure you respond to each part in your essay. For the ACT, the prompt describes a complex issue along with 3 viewpoints on that issue. You're required to evaluate and analyze the 3 different viewpoints, explain your own viewpoint on the issue, and describe the relationship between your viewpoint and the 3 viewpoints provided. With limited time to write, managing your time effectively is incredibly important. You want to start by spending the first 2 to 5 minutes outlining your work. After you have a plan, go ahead and get writing. This is where you'll spend the bulk of your time. You'll need to watch the clock and save yourself 2 to 5 minutes at the end for review. Your essay should have a clear, focused topic that directly answers the given question. And your writing should include examples and specific details. Lastly, we're going to go over some advice for test day. The day before the test, it is important to relax. Don't try to cram in last-minute practice. Exercise is a good way to relieve stress, and it will help you sleep well. It's best to gather everything you'll need on test day the night before. That way you don't forget anything and aren't rushed the day of. Finally, get good sleep the entire week before the test. Sleep is incredibly important, and definitely make sure you're getting enough sleep before the test. Okay, so it's really important to make sure you bring the following to the testing center. Your admission ticket, which can be printed from your online account, your photo identification, such as a passport, driver's license, or school ID. Your identification must be original rather than a photocopy or electronic version. Your first and last names must match the ticket, and the photo must be clearly recognizable as you. You're going to need 4 number 2 pencils with good erasers, a calculator, but double check that your calculator is permitted. There are some calculators that aren't permitted, so you're going to want to double check that your particular calculator is permitted. And also make sure to put in new batteries beforehand. So, the night before, put in new batteries for your calculator. And before that, double check that your model of your calculator is permitted. So it's good to bring a watch so you can keep track of time, but make sure your watch does not make any noise. No alarms or beeping. Finally, you'll want to bring water and a snack. It is a long test, so it's good to have some sort of snack and water for the break so you can keep your energy up. Okay, so what should you not bring to your test? All electronics, with the exception of a permitted calculator. So no cell phones, no digital watches, no laptops and tablets, no media players, nothing like that. Don't bring personal items like backpacks, bags, purses, and hats, large jewelry, and essentially any other item not listed as an item that you can bring. So don't bring notes or paper, mechanical pencils, pens, books, rulers, compasses, anything like that. So just stick to what you're allowed to bring. You can put all the, your pencils and your calculator and your ID in a clear plastic bag. That's usually a good way to do it. Okay, so on test day, it's important to make sure you wake up on time. You want to eat a good breakfast and grab everything you need and get to the test center early. Do not attempt to do any last minute practice on the day of the test. Just relax, be confident, and go ahead and take the test. So, do we have any questions? Okay, if we don't have any questions, you can check out our sites at testinnovators.com/ACT and testinnovators.com/SAT, or feel free to contact us with any questions. We're here 7 days a week, and you can reach us by email at support@testinnovators.com or by phone at 1-800-280-1857. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and I hope you have a fantastic day.